Welcome to the Real Talk with Megan podcast, where we have candid conversations about the things that matter most. I'm your host, Megan, and we're going to deep dive into the topic of mental health. Together, we'll work to destigmatize mental health and start conversations. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready for a real and raw conversation about mental health on the Real Talk with Megan podcast. We have Ethan with us. Ethan, tell us a little bit about yourself, just to get to know you a little bit as we're beginning this episode.
Keynote speaker, self-published author. My book is called The Inspirational Story of Ethan A. Poetic, Chronicles of Adversities, Education, Sports, Relationships, and Resiliency. I'm also a restorative justice and circles facilitator, certified mediator, mental health advocate.
That's awesome. So we'll jump right in. We talked a little bit back and forth through email about kind of a topic, and you really hit on that survivor's remorse. And I would just love to start with really defining that. Like, what is, for somebody who's never heard that term, what does that mean?
Survivor's remorse can relate to a lot of people. Somebody feeling guilty that someone passed away while you're still alive. Survivor's remorse could be related to people in the military where they lost a dear buddy. Survivor's remorse could be someone you lost so dearly that you just feel like you can't live without them. Survivor's remorse can just be carrying something you're not meant to carry, then try to cope with it certain ways, either productively or negatively.
Yeah. And so you kind of hit on these, like there's emotional and psychological effects that can linger for people who are dealing with survivor's remorse. Can you go into a little more depth of what some of those things could be?
I could say, for example, as a story, there's a woman I knew who unfortunately lost her son. And
Mm.
it's hard for a parent to bear their own child. Instead of seeking help through counseling and therapy, instead, she started spending money while being behind in her rent, electricity, car note, health insurance. And eventually, there was accountability in court where she was facing eviction. And eventually, she did get the help she needed later down the road and start redeeming herself. That's one part of survivor's remorse. Another part of survivor's remorse could be, unfortunately, some people work in the medical field where they lose somebody on the operating table. Another form of survivor's remorse could be, a person working inside a nursing home. They grow fond of that person, and next thing you know, that person's gone. And next thing you know, all those memories and talking to that person just not the same.
That really affects relationships and even relationships with others you're around, family, friends. It affects all your relationships around you. Have you seen that come about?
Yeah, it can. And when a person doesn't seek treatment or help, they start turning to things that are not healthy: drugs, alcoholism, certain addictions. And unfortunately, some people are not crying out for help through social media.
Hmm.
But I'm here to say the resources out there, counseling.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I talk about all the time is just talking to somebody, walking through those things. You can't walk through something if you're not going to process it, and then you just sit with, I'm sure, all this guilt that you feel. And the only way I can think of to describe it is like the waves of emotion, like they just come in waves. Is there a way that you can think of describing those waves of emotion?
I could say for myself personally that I experienced survivor's remorse. I lost my brother to gun violence. When my anniversary would show up, the waves of emotion would be up and down. There's times I didn't want to go outside, didn't want to go to school, for further my education, but I realized I just can't be in the house all day.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's just more, I see it as a celebration of life.
Yeah, we need to be able to acknowledge those feelings when we feel it. And I think you acknowledging being like, I can't just stay inside all the time is a huge step. And sometimes that's one of the first steps that we can take to kind of getting on a path of healing. It's not a there's not an end point where it's everything's better and it's all okay. But it's learning how to manage those feelings and those emotions that come through. I'm sure that there are some pressures that you feel for being the person who survived, either yourself or you've heard other people talk about that. What are some pressures that either you put on yourself or you feel like others are putting on you?
When it comes to talking about this stuff, it's a level of vulnerability, humility, and opening of the heart in many different ways.
Hmm.
It's like what people were seeing was a courageous story for me that I overcame. And here I am working, here I was furthering my education and graduated from college. what people didn't understand was I didn't intentionally want to talk about this stuff. I just wanted to go about my life, but life has a way of putting a person out their comfort zone. And it wasn't until, eventually I found out why I wasn't feeling uncomfortable talking about that. And it's because I was going through that survivor's remorse from in here and here.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that until I got interviewed by the Southeast Times newspaper. I thought it was a feel good interview until I saw those two words inside the article, survivor's remorse, and that hit me. The light bulb went off, and I could have handled it a much different way, but I decided to be patient previously because I didn't understand what was going on inside of me.
Yeah, that's hard when you don't know what's going on inside. And I use the phrase a lot, feeling some type of way. Like we don't always have a whole explanation of what we're feeling, but we're feeling some type of way. And that may have been, that numbness, or it may have been just pushing it aside, trying to move on with life, whatever that may be. So to coming to that realization, it seems like that really pushed you into going and talking to people more, sharing this, being more vulnerable, sharing your story. But that's a way of using something that was once painful and being able to help other people in so many different ways. It's just channeling that. What would you maybe say to somebody that may be dealing with that and doesn't realize maybe that they are going through a survivor's remorse, and how to channel that for something good?
I'll just say for myself, I was able to identify it, label it with words and statements, read books, go to therapy. Now it's just more channeling in a way of like earlier this month I was down in Maryland for a mental health event walk. And it was a tremendous, honor to be invited there and be supported and support other people on that journey. Far too often, people say they're busy, but I realize we make time for the things we prioritize.
Yeah.
You can address your situation for half an hour out of the day, maybe an hour out of the day. You're one step closer to experiencing healing because it's like an onion, one layer at a time until you get to the core. Eventually, you're going to experience a breakthrough.
Yeah, but you got to step out and move in some way. And I think a lot of times, whether it's this or so many other things that deal with mental health, is like we can isolate ourselves so much. And so, what would be something that you would say to someone who might feel very isolated, in their grief, in this survivor's remorse, to encourage them not to stay isolated?
You might miss out on your blessings, your opportunity, and your purpose, and allow it to hold you back. Then eventually you're carrying something you're not meant to carry. You're supposed to release it, whether it's write it on paper, where your thoughts are, talk to somebody.
Yeah, it's so important to surround ourselves with safe people, people who do have our best interest at heart, and people who do want to help us along the way, which helps you step out of that isolation, which is so important, not to stay there, not to stay isolated, because that's when really dark things can happen, and we don't want that.
It's not good to be in a dark place too long because eventually you need light to see.
Do you maybe have some advice for people who have went through this grief period of losing someone, and dealing with survivor's remorse, but also balancing honoring the people you've lost?
Take time to reflect on memories. Like, for example, then when I look at my grandparents' graves, I realize they're not here, but they did see me grow up. But eventually, there's many ways to honor somebody, whether it's visit grave sites, plant a tree in their name and memory. Some people start a nonprofit organization. Some people start a fundraising event.
There's many ways to celebrate the lives of those people, for sure. So, as we're kind of just wrapping up, what would be some encouragement or even just hope that you would offer somebody if they're listening today, who maybe feels stuck with the weight of survivor's remorse? What would be some encouragement or hope you would offer them?
I understand that it is real. You're not the only person dealing with it in the world. Because everyone's going through something. It's just a matter of how do you deal with it on an individual level, on a group level, family, congregation. Don't self sabotage yourself because it can go down a rabbit hole and it's hard to get yourself out of. But ultimately, you have to want to do the work yourself, and eventually, you'll see things in a different light and lens. I'll just say for myself, I've come a long way and I experienced a breakthrough by doing the work. I'm not telling you that it was easy. It just need to be done. If I didn't do the work, well, things will be starting to show up in my life.
Yeah, that's so good. I think that like sums up so much is we don't always realize what other people are going through, but by being able to share a little bit of your own story and what you're going through, you can start to let other people know like it's okay. Like if you're going through the same thing, let's go through this together. And then just somebody knowing that they're not alone, I think changes the game. And that's literally why I do this podcast is like letting people know they're not alone in whatever situation they're going through. You even said it is like everybody's going through something. And so it's just really figuring out and knowing like how to manage it, walking through those things, using those tools, those resources you were talking about, even, and doing that. And above all else, and I think I say this every podcast, is just go talk to somebody, a safe person, a safe friend, a safe family member, a therapist, counselor, whatever it may be. Use those resources and talk to somebody. Well, I'll put all your links in the show notes so people can find those if they want to get in contact with you or hear your story or read your book. We can definitely do that. And I just want to thank you for being a part of this podcast today.
Thank you very much, Megan. I appreciate this opportunity.
Thanks for listening to Real Talk with Megan. Remember, you are not alone. Seeking help is a sign of strength, and taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health. We'll see you next time for more honest conversations.